Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cutting Room in New York City. I'm Brad Talinsky with BackStory Events, and this evening's show is going to be live streamed on guitarworld.com, so behave yourself. Upcoming BackStory events include a really interesting special evening. We're going to have together on stage two great legendary jam bands, Mo and Blues Traveler, and I'm going to be talking to them, and they're actually going to play a set together, so that's going to be really cool. Check it out on backstoryevents.com for times and dates and all that good stuff. But here tonight on our stage, we have two real champions of blues and rock music. You know them from songs like Blue on Black and albums like Lay It On Down. They're here tonight to talk to us about a new record that's coming out at the end of the month, The Traveler. Let's bring them out, Mr. Noah Hunt and Kenny Wayne Shepherd. How you doing, sir? Hello, Kenny.
Thanks.
Get comfortable.
Musical microphone.
I feel like I'm a news reporter.
Hey guys, thanks for coming.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us.
Let's jump right into this thing. You've got a new record coming out called The Traveler. I was wondering about the significance of the album title.
Well, the title comes from a song called Tailwind. And Tailwind, the message is basically, you know, that we're all, in the chorus it says, hey, fellow travelers, keep traveling. And it's basically addressing all of us as fellow travelers. And the journey is life. You know, that we're all kind of getting through life one day at a time. And, you know, we may all come from different places and different backgrounds and have different appearances. But, we're all fellow travelers. We're all fellow humans. You know, I don't like to get political with my music, but I like a universal message of love and appreciation, and that's kind of what that song is about.
I can get behind that.
And so, you know, and also in a very literal sense, I thought it represented me, but not just me, but my band and my band members, as we travel the world, you know, to play music and bring music to people and hopefully bring some light and enjoyment into their lives, you know, through the music. And so we've been around the world. This little piece of wood with 6 strings on it has taken me around the world many times, and I'm very grateful for it.
I was going to say that you guys you've been pretty much road dogs all your life. I mean, what's the upside and what's the downside of all that?
Well, I would say the upside is getting to do what we love to do. That's first and foremost. I mean, not everybody gets to do that. Some people have to just roll their sleeves up and do what they got to do to pay the bills. And, you know, there's a work aspect to what we do, but the bottom line is we get to get on stage and play music. And the word play is the key word there.
Yeah, I don't like to use the term work. I don't like when people say that. It's time to go to work.
Yeah, and the work for us is the travel.
Yeah,
you know?
and the worst part is being away from the people you love.
Right.
You know, that's the hardest part, but everything else is pretty good.
Well, I've heard the record, and it is really terrific. But there's a lot of variety on the record in terms of the sounds and, you know, different songs on it. I was wondering, you know, did you have an idea going into recording this record? Did you have some specific musical goals?
Not really. I mean, the goal was to make a great record, and I think that we accomplished that. I mean, the last record, you know, I went into the last album, Lay It On Down, with the intention of trying to make the best album we've ever made over 20 years into a career. I think this is a continuation of that. The goal is always to, like, not repeat ourselves and to always try and outdo ourselves and push ourselves harder. You know, to be creative and not, like, get on autopilot and to not always do what's easy. I didn't have an idea of, I want the record to sound like this or that. I just wanted it to be full of great songs and great performances and tell good stories and take you on a journey. I mean, we make albums the old-fashioned way in many respects, but first and foremost, I approach a record as if you guys are going to listen to the whole thing from beginning to end, you know? And in today's world, that's not always the case, because you can kind of cherry pick what you want. You can go, I heard this one song, and go grab that one song off of whatever media outlet you want to get it from. But I grew up listening to albums, opening up, pulling the sleeve out of the vinyl or the CD case and reading the booklet and the liner notes and all that stuff, but listening to the whole thing as you're looking through that and taking the entire experience in. And when I still make records with that in mind, so from the first song to the last song, the order of every song, the song choices, the keys that they're in, and the flow of the music is all a very intentional thing.
Yeah, I mean, not to push the metaphor too hard, but you want to make the record like a journey too, right?
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think when you listen to it, the good thing is this album has 10 songs, and I realized like a few years ago, I think 10 songs is like the sweet spot, for records, and so you can listen to the whole thing, and you don't feel like it was too short, but you definitely don't feel like it was too long, and it can actually start over again, and you're not like ready to hurry up and put something else on. You can actually stand to listen to it a second time if you want to. So.
I was feeling this sort of modern country influence on this record, Woman Like You and Tailwind, a couple of other things, and I was wondering whether you guys had been listening to that or thinking in that terms, or was modern country being influenced by what you guys did? It's hard to tell at this point.
That's the big question, right?
No, I don't listen to that, so I don't.
I mean, if you want my personal opinion, if you listen to modern country music, it sounds like 90s rock and roll. Yeah. And so, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but like, it sounds like 90s rock. And we were dominating 90s rock radio. So, which came first, I don't know. But what you're probably hearing is that I've always, from the very beginning of my career, written with people from Nashville.
Ah, right.
And because country music and blues they kind of go hand in hand. Their origins are somewhat similar. They tell a similar story. They just have a little bit of a different spin musically on it. But blues, rock and roll, country, it's all related. And so from the very beginning, I wrote with people from Nashville for one reason, because country music always tells a good story. Like traditional country music generally tells a good story. And so I was always a fan of storytellers, and so I wanted to tell stories in my songs. But the other thing is that the country songwriters, all they do is write country music all day long, every day. It's to some degree, it's like a factory, and they have 3-hour sessions, and it's like there's a format, and like you get a song from start to finish, and it's done in 3 hours, no matter what, and you're on to the next thing, and it's like, so that's not what I do, but these guys are dying to write music besides country music, because that's what they do all the time. So when I would go to town, and I'd be like, hey, man, I want to write some songs, and they're like, oh, Kenny Wayne Shepherd's in town, he wants to write some songs. People are like, hey, let's do it. Let's write some blues. Let's write some rock and roll. And so, I found people that I worked really well with, and we've had a really great career writing together with a lot of these people. And I'm still finding new people. Like on this album and the last album, there's some people that I wrote with for the first time, and still doing a good job. But you're going to hear some of that maybe to me, it's really in the phrasing. On the last album, it was a song, Hard Lesson Learned, and we even put like a lap steel guitar on it. And some people were telling me, well, maybe that's going too far. But I'm like, no, it's perfect for this song. That was probably the most country-influenced song that we've ever done. But what you're hearing in Woman Like You, it's just the phrasing. It's like one thing that modern country music has is they have this real catchy kind of phrasing, and they're really good at hooks and little subtle things that stick in your head. So in Woman Like You, in the chorus, it goes, give me that, sunshine, love, or whatever. And it's like, it's just repeating that phrase twice is so magical, the way it can just make it stick right in your head. So we use little tricks like that are very successful in modern country music, and we bring it over into the rock and blues side of things, and it brings a breath of fresh air into the blues genre.
Yeah. Well, there's this cool country influence, but at the same time, one of my favorite flavors on the record was you brought in a horn section for a few of the songs, and a lot of my favorite R&B records have had great horn sections. I was wondering if there was something in particular that inspired you guys to bring that into your record.
Well, I mean, a lot of my heroes had horn sections, especially the blues bands. Like B.B. King's probably one of the most obvious examples, but I love big band and swing and stuff like that. I love the music of the 1940s where like the horn players were the featured performers in the band. I love a good horn section, and it's another element of me pushing myself outside my comfort zone, because when you bring a horn section into the mix, it changes the approach. Like we had those guys come up and play with us on a gig that we did a couple months ago, and they were playing songs with us that we've been playing for years, and based on the parts they were playing, I had to change what I was playing because it was conflicting with them. So then I had to reapproach my entire part for my own song, which is challenging, and it's cool, because then it's like, now I'm playing a song that we've been doing for 15 years, and I'm playing it in a different way because I added that element to the band.
I mean, Noah, don't you feel like a little bit of more of a badass singing in front of a horn section going?
Well, yeah, it's all about making me look better. So that's the real reason behind it. Lead vocalist, fragile ego.
One of my favorite tracks on the record was your version of Mr. Soul, a Buffalo Springfield Neil Young song, and it's got the super hard charging horn arrangement to it.
Right.
Curious about how you happened upon that song.
Well, so the song in particular I did because I have another band called The Rides with Stephen Stills, which has been a lot of fun, and we've done 2 albums and like 3 tours, and we're talking about doing a 3rd album. So looking forward to that. We did a tour, and then at the end of the tour, we did an autism benefit concert that Stephen does every year to bring awareness to autism. And he always has this whole slew of legendary people that come out and perform. Well, Neil Young was coming out, so I thought, this is going to be an awesome opportunity I want to do Mr. Soul. Now, obviously, the decision wasn't mine to make, but I planted the seed. And we ended up rehearsing it the night before, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, because we did Rockin' on the Free World on our first album with the Rides, and we did that with them too, which was pretty cool. But I was actually even more thrilled to do Mr. Soul. And so I remember going up there and playing, and he had me playing it was weird because you got 3 guitar players up there. And at one point we were doing, I don't remember what song it was, but they gave me a solo, and I was playing a solo. And after the fact, Steven said, Neil, don't you think you should be playing a little more aggressive? And Neil turns around and looks at me, and he goes, I think we got all the aggression on the stage that we need. So then I thought, I'm overdoing it, so I need to lay back. And I'm usually the kind of guy, when I get around people like that, I really want to fade into the background. I don't really want to be out there trying to shine in the spotlight. I want to be respectful. So we did Mr. Soul, and I'm playing that lick. Dun, 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 dun. It sounds like Satisfaction, And at the end of the song, he like turns around. He goes, hey, man, if you're going to play that lick, you got to get up there. You got to play it hard, and you got to play it loud. And I said, well, man, okay, I was just trying to be respectful. And he goes, well, be respectful and play the damn thing loud. So I was like, okay, you got it. So anyways, the next night we did the show, I still kind of faded into the background. There's like really shaky YouTube video from somebody's cell phone of that performance, and people are commenting. They're like, Neil's not even acknowledging Kenny Wayne. Kenny looks totally out of place, and look at him over there. And I'm just like, dude, I'm in fanboy mode. I'm like, I'm standing over here looking at Neil Young and Stephen Stills, and I'm backing these guys up, and I'm just having a ball. So that's the reason why we did it in the studio, and I was paying tribute to that experience because it really was like a highlight for me. It was really cool. And when we brought the horns in, I was envisioning horns on all these different songs, and when we put that one up, I was really curious to see what was going to happen because the original didn't have horns. It's a really rockin' song, And so I thought, this is either going to be really cool or it's just not going to work at all. And it really, in my opinion, the horn parts just took it to a whole nother level. It's really cool.
It's totally stomping. You know what it reminded me of, though, I have to say, is Otis Redding did a great version of Satisfaction, and I thought, maybe Kenny picked up on that, too.
I didn't, no.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That is.
But you know what? That's what's funny about music is like you can hear something when you're like 5 years old, and it can like swirl around back there in your subconscious, and then you can be writing a song in like 2019, and they'll be like, and you think, oh man, I just wrote this killer lick, and then somebody's like, man, that sounds just like that Otis Redding song, or it sounds just like, you know, Otis Rush, or, and I'm like, oh man, you know, you don't even.
It's not bad to sound like Otis Redding.
No, but you don't even realize it. That stuff all stays in there.
Yeah, I'll say.
Somebody told me this morning that I sound like Warren Zevon on a song, and I said, well, I listened to him a lot, and then we listened to part of the song, and I said, it sounds exactly like Warren Zevon. Oh, well.
Well, speaking of Stephen Stills, I mean, you did play a couple of albums with him, and, you know, Steve's, I think, one of the most underrated, underappreciated guitar players. I mean,
I don't think so. And he doesn't think so. Because he's told me more than a few times exactly what number he was on the Rolling Stone top 100 guitar players of all time. And he likes to do that because he knows they've never put my name on the list. So he's got a great sense of humor like that, you know.
Well, you know, Stephen does have a reputation. What did you, I mean, did everything go good with that?
Oh, no, let me tell you what. Stephen is like my big brother, and to be honest with you, in my experience in life, now this is just me, I can only speak for myself, but I've encountered a lot of people over the years where you hear all this stuff, you know. Bob Dylan's one of them, Stephen, you know, whatever. You hear, and the thing, it's like having a baby. People want to tell you the worst possible story they can think of about having a baby. Like, what is that? Like, childbirth. Oh, my gosh, this is going to happen. It's going to be horrible. And it's like, instead of telling you how wonderful it could be, right? So people want to tell you the worst stuff they can possibly think of about somebody. And I learned not to take on somebody else's problems and somebody else's resentment, and just to go into things with an open mind and see what my experience is going to be. Because just because maybe he was rude to you doesn't mean he's going to be rude to me. And Stephen has been a sweetheart, like, the whole time I've known him. And he's just the sweetest guy to me, and he really, like, treats me like I'm his little brother, and we just have a ball together, and we really challenge each other, and he's made me a much better performer and songwriter and producer and singer. He pushed me really hard to sing more. He's been really great to know on a personal level, but he's really influenced me on a professional level, too.
He's got a super work ethic, that I've heard.
Well, what's cool is, like, he's literally, I think, one of the greatest songwriters of our time. And those guys, when they were in the studio, like, at a certain point, they just started doing it all themselves, like engineering the records and producing the albums and all that stuff. So going in the studio and watching him and how he knows how to engineer records and how to get certain sounds and what he wants is pretty remarkable. I mean, it's impressive.
You know, we've talked a little bit about some country influence and the R&B influence, but there is a killer blues song on the record, I Want You, which is just a banger. How do you see the maturity in your own playing from, you know, say Time Like Trouble Is to now? Do you feel a big difference in your playing?
I mean, I see a progression. I see a steady progression. I see that nowadays I leave more space, and I'll be more selective about what I play. And my intention behind every song and a guitar solo is to play for the music and play what's appropriate for the song, and not see every song as some self-serving opportunity to, like, blaze on the guitar. But people want to hear that, so I try and find the right moments to do that without being too self-indulgent, you know. And to me, when I went back and listened to my heroes, I really had a conscious, like, there was a moment of deliberate consciousness when I was like, if I want to refine what I'm doing, what's my intention behind playing music? My intention behind playing music is to move you in here from the inside out. I don't necessarily want to wow you with how many licks I know or how fast I can play or how many mistakes I make or whatever. I want to move you emotionally from the inside out. So I went back and I go, well, these are my heroes. These are the people that move me. So I go back and I listen to those people, Albert King, B.B. King, whoever, the list goes on. And then I would listen to songs and I would wait for the moment that my soul was stirred up inside. And I would stop and I would go, what just happened? And not one time was it ever because they were playing some flashy, triplet, 5-note, descending.
Widdly, widdly.
Yeah, it wasn't any of that. It was like the right note at the right time with the right amount of feel with like a slow bend or whatever. It's, sometimes it was one note or like one lick. And that's what just moved me almost to tears. And I'm like, well, if that's how they did it to me, then that's probably the best way for me to do it to y'all. So I kind of refined my approach a little bit to be more selective, And that's cool because there's a lot of great guitar players out there, and there's a lot of guys that can do a lot of stuff that I can't do or that I have chosen not to practice enough to do. And that's great. There's room for all of us, There's room for all kinds of styles. There's room for all kinds of artists. And just because I do this doesn't mean everybody has to do this. But what makes me happy is when I read comments and I get past the people that are talking trash, because there's inevitably somebody who's got a problem with something, and I see the one person or the 5 people or the 10 people that said, man, this guy plays with raw emotion. Or this guy, there's a video of us doing the slow voodoo child on this cruise that we recently did. It's on YouTube, and these guys are like, this guy could move mountains with his playing, and I'm like, and they're just talking about not the dexterity, not how fast it is, but the emotion that I was putting into it, and that's how I know that I'm accomplishing what I set out to accomplish.
Well, what really I loved about I Want You is like how much you're playing with time when you're playing the solo. It's not just the notes. You're playing behind, you're pushing it ahead. I mean, that's really, if you're a musician, it's a really sort of a difficult thing to do, is just not sit there in the pocket and really move it around.
Yeah, I mean, I've always intuitively kind of done that. Muddy Waters and his band were the people that really, and James Brown and his band, but Muddy especially on this one record, Hard Again, that I bring up in almost every interview, is like the best blues album of all time for me. And there's this song called Bus Driver, and it's a slow blues song, and Willie Big Eye Smith is playing the drums. And I think Calvin Fudge Jones on bass and Pine Top Perkins on piano, and they're the ones, and James Cotton's playing harp and Johnny Winter on guitar. It's a great band. But it's this slow blues, and all the guy's doing is playing the kick drum and the snare. And he's so far behind the beat that when you're listening for the downbeat, you almost don't even know if he's gonna hit it. And you're just like, it's like I'm about to fall out of my chair, and then somebody pushes me back forward, And I just thought that was so cool. So, listening to that and analyzing that and learning the feel behind that, I've been able to incorporate some of that kind of stuff in the playing that I do.
You've played with so many, as you mentioned, just incredibly legendary people, B.B. King, Hubert Sumlin, Eric Clapton. What do you learn from that experience?
Well, I mean, I learned a lot from BB especially, but BB taught me a lot of things. Like, I'd already learned a lot from his playing. So playing on stage is not so much a learning moment as it is like, just this, again, I would always go into like shy 13-year-old Kenny Wayne mode. And I was always worried about overplaying and overdoing it. He would always have to like coax it out of me. But really, he taught me some life lessons in private, And he gave me like lots of great advice, but not always about music. He gave me lots of advice about women. That was usually his default, was talking about women. And he told me this story one time. It was like, okay, so the first The first time I did some shows at BB, I was 15 years old. The last show of the tour was my 16th birthday. So they like, Mr. King wants to see you in his dressing room, right after he got off stage. So they walked me back there, they opened the door, and they kind of pushed me in the door. I walk in, he's standing there in his underwear, taking his clothes off. And I'm like, oh, hey, I'll come back later. He goes, no, son, sit down now, have a seat. You're one of the guys now. And I'm like, okay. So he's changing clothes, and he's talking to me, and inevitably, we start talking about women, or he starts talking about women. And he goes, son, if I'm gonna ever give you some advice, I'm gonna tell you this. Don't go home with a woman that you don't know. And I say that because one time I met this lady after a show, and she invited me back to her house. And I went back to her house, and we spent some time together, and we were friendly. And I fell asleep in her bed, and a couple hours later, somebody walked through the door, and it was her husband. Now, she didn't tell me she had a husband, so I jumped up and didn't even have time to put my clothes on. I'm in my underwear, and I jumped out the window, and I'm running down the street, and the police come driving up. And he said, the police were like, hey, man, what's going on? And he told them the whole story. And he said, they had mercy on me, and they took me back to my tour bus, and I have never gone home with another woman again that I did not know.
Yeah, so remember that tonight.
And wait a minute. And now that's a good story, but I'm going to remind you that I was 16 years old when he's telling me this, right? So.
But he listened.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, listen. Yeah. So, you know, it's like moments like that, to be honest with you, are like more valuable to me than just jamming on stage with somebody.
Oh, yeah, that's like gold dust, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember that too, all right?
Well, BB once told me, he goes, son, learning, having sex is like learning how to ride a bicycle. Once you do it, you never forget how.
Yeah. Well, he definitely was a ladies' man. You know, he had 18 children, and I believe they were all with different ladies. And but he loved people, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. Like, he loved people and he loved women. He was charming. Yeah. I'm not gonna tell you. Never mind. I'm not gonna give away all my good material. I gotta save some of it for, like, you know, for my kids or something.
Speaking about people that influenced you, sort of famously, you were initially influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan, by hearing him play.
Right. Who wasn't?
Yeah. But I'm wondering if you have a different perspective of his playing now than you did when you were a kid.
I don't think so. I think that, you know, when I listen to his music now and his playing, it still moves me in the way that it did when I was a kid. And I still listen to him and go, just, you know, he's one of the greatest of all time. And, you know, the thing is there was a lot of comparisons in the beginning because, you know, we're still kind of reeling from the loss of Stevie when my first album came out. It had only been 5 years since he passed away. And nobody had really stepped up and was doing this kind of music, you know, like in that way. And so I didn't really know what people were going to say or think about my first time. I was a teenager, and I wasn't the lead singer. And, you know, it's like you never know what people are going to think about anything. But for the most part, you know, the public welcomed me and my band with open arms. But there was a lot of comparisons. But here's the thing. Never for a moment. I had a SRV Strat, you know, but you'll never see a picture of me, although I'm wearing a hat now, but it's not that kind of hat. But you'll never see a picture of me with the SRV hat and the boa and, you know, dressed like him. Or my intention was never to fill anybody's shoes or try and be somebody that I'm not. But I would be doing him a disservice if I tried to pretend like he didn't affect me the way that he did. And I come from a lineage of players that came before me, just like him, that always gave credit where credit is due for the people that inspired them to play. Like he did with Albert King so much and Jimi Hendrix and stuff. And so, you know, it's a fact. It's like a documented, well-known fact that I met him when I was 7 years old. I watched his show from the side of the stage. I was completely mesmerized. And from that day forward, all I wanted to do was get my hands on an electric guitar and try and learn how to move people the way he moved me through music. And so it's inevitable. You listen to early B.B. King, you're going to hear all that T-Bone Walker influence, you know? And you hear it with everybody. And so there's always going to be the spirit of some SRV in what I do, because he lit the fire inside me to do what I do. But, you know, we've branched off, and we've done a lot of things over the years. Like, Stevie Ray Vaughan would never have written or recorded Blue on Black, or, you know, a lot of songs that we do. And so it's not like I'm not trying to do anything, but I am always going to be. There's a lot of guys don't even want to talk about the influence that he was to them because they don't want to get labeled as an SRV wannabe. And I'm just like, hey, man, the haters are going to hate, and the people that dig what I do can just keep on digging it. But I'm always going to give credit to him, because without him, there wouldn't be a Kenny Wayne Shepherd. You know?
No, that's absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, Stevie, I was editor of Guitar World for many years, and we, you know, back when Stevie was alive, and he would almost always talk about the people that made a huge impact on him and his playing. And you certainly hear, you know, Albert King and his playing, but you know, he did his own thing. He put his own.
Early on, everybody called Stevie a Jimi Hendrix clone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they were critical of him. Everybody, they don't know how, people can't think outside the box. They have to put a label on you somehow. So, you know.
But the blues is all about sharing and passing on the tradition.
Absolutely. And you got to give credit where credit is due, or at least you should, because none of us invented any of this, man. We all kind of borrow stuff, and, you know, you hear a lick from one guy. You hear an Albert Collins lick, and you think, man, that's awesome, but you don't want to play it just like Albert Collins. You want to take out what Albert did and turn it into what Kenny's going to do with it and put your own little personality on it. That's how you develop. You evolve into having your own style, at least in blues music.
You have played quite a bit, and he's on the new record with Stevie's drummer, Chris Layton. Mm-hmm. What makes his pocket different than other drummers that you've played with?
Chris?
I don't know. He's the master of, like, the shuffle.
Yeah.
He plays like no other drummer that I've ever played with or ever seen. It's just all this subtle stuff that he does. Mm-hmm. I mean, I sit there and play and watch him, and it's amazing. It's kind of hard to describe.
He does all these ghost notes,
yeah.
And he uses both hands, the double shuffle, all that stuff. And that a lot of guys, like, you know, most people can't even really play a shuffle properly, or like they misinterpret what the shuffle is, and they're trying to use the kick drum to create the shuffle, when the kick drum should just be really more straight most of the time. But they're always saying do-do, do-ch, do-do, do-ch. That's not right. It's like, and Chris told me that, I can't think of his name right now. It's escaping me, but this guy from Austin, this old bass player guy. He actually was teaching Chris the idea of a shuffle, and he said it's like the waves out in the ocean coming in to shore. And something about the way he described that to Chris, it just clicked, and he got it. And so Chris can play all that stuff. But what's cool about Chris is he sits back there, and it's so much in his wrists that his upper body is barely moving. So you can be out in the audience, and you see his little head poking up, and it looks like he's not doing anything. And because you got a lot of drummers that, you know, they want to make a spectacle, you know, so they're like, bam, doing all this stuff and twirling, and, you know, and you got to stand up, you know. And Chris just sits back there, and he's doing like this, and all you see is his head up there. And so I was like, Chris, what is it about that? So he told me, he said, when I was a kid, I mean, this is his story to tell, so I hope I'm not doing it a disservice, but he said when he was a kid, his dad used to sit him in front of the television and say, you want to see a real drummer? That's a real drummer. And he would have Buddy Rich on TV. So he pulled up a video of Buddy Rich, and sure enough, Buddy's sitting over there on the drum kit. They got a side shot of him, and he's doing this. And his body's not moving, just his arms, you know? And I'm like, it looks like Chris. And that's exactly where he gets it from. And, you know, he was a kid. He was soaking that up, you know. And then that became part of his style.
That was one thing, one interesting musical experience I had was I was in a fairly small room with Buddy Miles playing drums.
Oh,
the great drummer that played with Electric Flag and Jimi Hendrix and all these people.
Yeah, you look like this.
And the thing is it was weird because he would just sit there and he'd be like, there would be such a minimal amount of movement and it would just be explosive.
Yeah,
The sound was
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
he was,
wild.
he was
Quite
very
a character,
talented.
too.
So, no, you've been working with this guy for a couple of decades now. What is that process when you guys work together on a song or Kenny presents you with a new song? Do you guys work on the interpretation of it? I mean, how is that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, but you know, when I was growing up, my favorite bands had this incredible guitarist and the vocalist, and it always seemed to be a collaboration between them. So, you know, I'll just sing it how I hear it, and sometimes he'll give me direction, and then but it's always been a collaboration all these years, back and forth.
Who's your guys? Are they more blues or are they the classic rock guys?
Well, I grew up listening to the classic rock guys, and then in the '80s, when I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, all the other music, the popular music, was such crap. In my opinion, I didn't like. No offense if you like hair metal and stuff like that, but so I would look. That made me look backwards into the guys that influenced them. Because like you guys were saying, Stevie was always real.
I mean, he's a great singer too.
Oh yeah, and I always thought Jimi Hendrix was a great singer. I was surprised when he said that he didn't like to sing, but that made me kind of go back into the blues and kind of fill in the gaps behind the classic rock guys that I grew up on.
There's a new version of Blue on Black floating around.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot of pretty impressive people that you collaborated on, including Brian May of Queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, so, we had a really good run with that song. That was a really big hit for us back in the 90s. And I basically have kind of been waiting to see if somebody was going to cover it, because I figure it's over 20 years old now, and it's just old enough to where, for the young audience, it'll be like a brand new song to them.
We didn't think Five Finger Death Punch would ever be the band.
Well, I didn't know.
But I love it. Don't get me wrong.
No, but honestly, I was waiting for anybody, because to me it's a song that it crosses the lines of genre. I was really thinking that a country artist was probably going to come along and record it.
That's what we thought probably happened.
But the Five Finger Death Punch guys did it. So we were out on tour with Van Halen a few years ago, and I kept getting calls from my booking agent, and he was like, "Oh, there's a guy from Five Finger Death Punch, and he's a big fan of the band. He wants to come out to one of the shows and meet you." But our paths never crossed, so it didn't happen. And that was the last time I had heard anything about those guys. And then I got word that they had recorded this Blue on Black for their album that came out this past December. And then I started getting phone calls where they were saying, "Hey, we covered your song, but we want to do another version of it with you playing on it, because then it's not really a cover song if you're playing on it, And I was like, "Yeah, cool, sounds fine, let's do it." And then the next thing you know, they had brought Brantley Gilbert in, who's got a really strong following in the country world. And again, it's like I said, I always thought a country artist was going to come along and cover it, so I was like, wow, this is appropriate. And then Brian May pops up, and they're like, Brian May's going to play on it, and I was like, that's killer. So I did my stuff. I played guitar. I played some of the original parts, so there had its roots were coming from the original. I sang a harmony vocal. Normally I sing an octave over Noah, but in the Five Finger Death Punch version, Ivan, the lead singer, when he gets to the chorus, he actually goes up to my part and sings my part for the chorus. So then I had to go higher than that and sing like a seventh to his, but I wanted it to be on there, and it actually sounds really cool. And then Brantley did it, and then Brian May played his stuff on it. It was really awesome, and I told him, I said, I think you guys are going to have a hit with this song. The song's a hit song. It's not, I'm not saying that because it's my song. I believe in the song, and I think that the song will be successful for anybody who does it. So I think you're going to have a big hit with it. And then when they got everybody on there together, I was like, wow, this is really special. And so we talked about it, and we all came, they said, there's a Gary Sinise Foundation, and we're all pretty serious, about, we've all been given a lot and we've worked hard, but we want to give back. And, the first responders, that's something that's close to all of our hearts. You look at
Especially
California, I live in California. We just had all the wildfires, and, I know people who lost their homes, but I also know people, they kept the fires from coming right into my neighborhood. And, those guys do that, and the policemen and the military and the paramedics, all these people that put themselves in harm's way to help people that they don't even know, to protect people or to try and save their lives, and so we just decided we would do our part to try and help them out. And so we're donating all the money that's for that song to the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Good cause. So this is for Guitar World, so I have to ask at least one guitar or a couple of guitar nerd questions.
Sure.
You've been playing Strats for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How does the Strat you're playing now differ from the one that you started out with?
Well, oh my gosh, they couldn't be more different. Like, okay, so check this out. The first guitar I ever got wasn't even a Strat. It was a wannabe Strat. It was like a Yamaha SE 150. Look it up. It's not pretty. And it has a volume knob and a pickup, and that's it. And, it's fine for a 7-year-old. But I was working my way up. I wanted a Strat. So I actually got an Epiphone Les Paul next. So that was next. I got an acoustic guitar, Yamaha acoustic. Then I got an Ibanez. And then I got a Strat. And I didn't buy these. These were guitars that were given to me by my dad. And so when he had the Strat, he had 2 Strats. And they were both candy apple red. And one of them was, I don't know if it was made in Japan or made in America. I don't know, but it was it was a red candy apple Strat, regular tremolo, rosewood neck, the whole 9 yards. The other one was a red candy apple red Strat with a maple neck and a Floyd Rose tremolo and a locking nut on it, right? And I had never seen that before. So I'm like, oh, look at all this stuff on this guitar. I'll take that one. And I found out pretty quickly that that was the wrong choice for me. Because it was such a pain in the butt, man. Just stringing the thing and like all the little fine tuning knobs down here and locking it down. And it was just a pain. But Stevie Ray Vaughan autographed that guitar for me. And so I played it until I basically almost wore his entire signature off. Now this is like 14-year-old stuff here. So I played it. He signed it up here on the horn, which is right where my pick goes. So I kind of wore through. You could kind of faintly see the outline of the first half of his signature. So I was so sad, but I wasn't going to stop playing the guitar. It's my only Strat. So I was like, I got to fix this. So I got my little Sharpie out, and I started trying to draw it back in and totally, like, screwed up the first part of it. So it's kind of this weird hybrid of, like, his actual signature worn off and then covered up by my sad attempt at trying to restore his signature. So I had Floyd Rose, locking nut, all that stuff on my first Strat. Now it's very old school. I have my vintage Strats that I use, but my custom shop Strats, and I actually have a new signature series that's coming out that's going to be made in America. We had one that was made in Mexico for a long time, 3 models for many years, and now we have a new one that's going to probably come out early next year. And, the thing is like I got jumbo frets, I got a rosewood fretboard. My first signature guitar had a 12-inch radius, so it was real flat for good big bends and stuff like that, and plays a little faster. Thick neck, really thick neck. The new one has, I'm trying to decide actually between a 7 1/4 radius or a 9 1/2. I'll probably gotta go with the 9 1/2. You know, 'cause
Rock it like a man.
yeah, and but the 7 1/4 is really cool. It's more vintage appropriate.
Yeah.
But when you get up high and you start bending, it can like tend to fret out because it's so round, you know. And so, anyways, but it's got jumbo frets. This neck profile is actually very accurate reproduction of the neck on my 61 Strat. The other Signature series, it had a profile that was similar to it, but the neck was so much thicker than my actual 61 Strat. So, you know, I got my custom voice pickups, but the big change is the Graphtec saddle. So in the 90s, I was breaking strings like crazy. And what I was doing, I was using these thick strings, and they would wear grooves into the saddles of those old Fender saddles on the bridge, and it would wear through the plating, and then it would basically wear a groove into it, and it would get sharp. And it was like a set of wire cutters. So I'd play real hard, so I'd go, bam, and it would just like cut the string, and it would just bust it, right? And so I was like, I got to figure out a fix for this, and I found Graphtec saddles. And as soon as I put them on, I literally stopped breaking strings. So it's really important when you're playing live. And so I've been using them ever since. So we use those on my guitar. But basically, it's just it's a vintage, you know, style Strat. It's kind of all you need.
Cool. I'm going to ask one more question and then toss it out to the audience. So get your thinking hats on. You're going to be touring pretty soon with one of the greats, Buddy Guy.
Right.
We're all looking forward to that. What's your favorite Buddy Guy tune? What influence has Buddy had on you?
Well, Buddy, so first time I met Buddy, I was 14 years old, and I was riding around in a 15-passenger van with him in Dallas, Texas. And this is before I even had my own band. Like, you know, the only reason why I was around him was because my dad ran a radio station in Shreveport, and he knew Buddy's record company guy. And they were doing radio press in Dallas, and I was a big fan. So the record company guy wanted to make my dad happy so that my dad would play his records. And so he was like, why don't you bring Kenny and y'all come along with us for the day while Buddy's doing press. So I'm hanging out with Buddy Guy all day, 14 years old. And he signed that same first Stratocaster of mine that day. And then I went on to do shows with him. And, you know, we've done a lot of cool stuff together over the years. And one time we were doing a show, and Buddy was on it, and everybody was trading licks. There was a big jam going on stage, and I was standing at the side of the stage just watching. Buddy saw me standing over there, and he gives is this like do I have to watch my mouth on this thing?
No, you don't.
I mean, I don't generally like to use profanity in an open forum like this, but this is what this is a direct quote. So, the jamming's going on. He throws a solo to somebody, and he walks straight at me to the side of the stage, and he goes, "Don't you go no motherfucking where, because you about to get some of this shit." And then he walks back out and starts playing, right? And so all of a sudden, they're playing solos, and he goes, "Let's bring Kenny Wayne out here. Kenny Wayne, come on." So I walk out. I'm like, I don't have a guitar. So I walk out. I'm like, I got no guitar. He takes his guitar off, hands me his guitar. I put on his guitar and tore it up. And then I took the guitar off, handed it back to him. "Thank you very much. Good night." And that was one of the coolest things ever, because he just like was here. You know?
Absolutely. Is there, do any of you kind folks out there have some questions for Kenny?
We're going to start over here.
All right, Noah, Kenny, guys, we've been seeing you since Ledbetter Heights. It's play together, stay together. It's awesome, man. It's awesome. We saw you in Mesa recently. Great. Question. You're on the road all the time. I've never seen you leave anything in the bullpen. Every night you're bringing it, right? How do you, I mean, maybe I can't recognize it because you're so damn good. I don't know when you're bad, right? But how do you bring it every night? I've seen you 50 times. I've never seen a bad concert.
Thanks,
man. That's the only way we know how, man. I mean, it's just give everything we have. It might be the last time we get to play, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like it's our responsibility, you know.
Yeah, you guys pay hard-earned money to come see what we do. We couldn't do what we do without you guys, you know.
I remember there was we did a live record. We haven't done It's the only live record we put out live in Chicago. And I remember that night, I was sick, like bad sick. I was on the sofa in the dressing room, like curled up in a ball, like shaking. I don't know if I had the flu or whatever. We had a meet and greet. We canceled the meet and greet, which we don't normally do. I mean, I can't even remember another time that I've canceled a meet and greet. And I literally was like, I don't think I can do this. And they came up, they're like, 3 minutes to showtime. So I stood up, I walked down to the stage, I walked out, and as soon as the music hit, it was like nothing ever happened. And what's crazy is that ended up being our live record that we put out. And I remember listening back to it, and I'm kind of even shocked. But we did this thing where 10 Days Out, Blues from the Backroads, this documentary. And there's this guy, Neil Patman, and we're doing this interview, and he's talking, and he talks about the healing powers of music. And he says, you know, I remember, he said, I tell you about so many times I've been sick. I go out on stage, I start playing the blues, I feel fine. And he's serious, you know. It's like, I don't know if it's the adrenaline. I feel like, you know, my intention every night.
Only had one arm, too.
Yeah, my intention every night is to give you guys everything that I can. That's all right. And to just leave it all out there because that's what you deserve, you know. You guys took time out of your day. You guys work hard. And it's true, man. I go out every night, I pray. I have the intention. I'm like, can we please just bring light into these people's lives and, you know, give glory to the music and just hopefully let them go home feeling better than they did when they got there.
Exactly. We actually say that.
All right. We're going to take another question while Kenny has a drink.
I'm assuming I must have looked like my mouth was dry since y'all ran up here.
Hey guys, how you doing? I just want to tell you that I think one of the most underrated albums of the last 10 years in any genre is How I Go. I think every song, start to finish, is so good. I just want to tell you that. But, you know, I've been a fan ever since, you know, Let Better Heights and everything. I was just wondering, have you guys ever thought about recutting the album with the current lineup?
Which album? Let Better Heights? Yeah, we've actually talked about that. I've talked about that. I mean, maybe I haven't talked to them. I don't know. Have I talked to you about that?
Not really.
I've been talking to myself about it.
He mumbles to himself about it in the corner. I've heard him.
I got to work it out with myself first, and then I tell everybody else. But yeah, I thought about it, and sometimes that's a cool thing to do. A lot of artists will do that because it's a way to get around the fact that you don't own the original recordings, and so for licensing purposes, because there's like revenue that you can get from if somebody wants to use Deja Voodoo or Shame, Shame, Shame or whatever, they have to go through the record company that owns the masters, that they're a part in all of that process. So then you go, if you're past the re-record restriction, you go in, you re-record stuff, then you own the masters, and then you can go license it out without having to go get permission from the record company that you no longer speak with anyways. So that's why a lot of bands do that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily why I was considering doing it. It's a happy byproduct of that. It would be a benefit of doing that. What I thought about doing is just like an updated version of it, and obviously, you know, it'd be cool because we've been playing those songs for 20 years, so not all of them, but most of them.
A lot of them.
And they'd be refined, they'd be slightly different. You'd have Noah's voice on there instead of the other guy. But at the same time, I thought, you know, why mess with it? You know, I feel like we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and I don't know. Do you want to really give people the opportunity to compare you against you, like redoing? I don't know. So I'm kind of on the fence about it. I've entertained the idea. Well, we've talked about doing a show, and I still plan on doing this at some point where we do. And what I want to do is do it through social media. If you guys, I don't know, hopefully you probably follow us. But I want to do it where we do a show and we do an entire album from start to finish. And then we can like talk to the fans before we go in and say, okay, which album do you want to hear tonight? You know, tonight will be The Trouble Is night, or tonight be Let Better Heights night, you know, and let people vote. And, you know, some people are not Because every time somebody votes, somebody still winds up pissed off because they didn't win, right?
Well,
And so
eventually we should end
so
up
some
doing it.
people are, but hopefully they like all the records anyways. But we thought about doing that as well. There's a lot of different things, that are going around in my head right now about ways to do different things and make the live experience unique and different from the last time. Because we have a lot of people like this man over here said he's seen us 50 times, and we appreciate that. But we want you to come and see a
I heard you
different
might
show.
be bringing some horns out on the road with you.
The horn guys are coming out with us in June. I'm hoping to make that more a permanent part of what we do. But it just adds another dimension to the show, and it'll be something different if you've seen us like this man here has. We've done horn sections here and there over the years, but we're going to have them out for the whole month of June and maybe back out again later this year.
Maybe one more. Okay, right here.
Hi, guys. Kenny, you are by far my favorite living guitarist.
Thank you.
By far. I think if you and I compared a list of favorite guitarists of all times, we might have a lot of the same people on it. But as far as living people go, you're it. Okay?
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, for you, who's on your playlist? Who is it that you like to listen to more than anybody else?
Well, to be honest with you, when I'm really feeling like I want to get inspired, I go back to the stuff that really inspired me in the first place. So usually my default is Muddy Waters, it's Albert King, it's B.B. King, it's Jimi Hendrix, it can be Stevie Ray Vaughan. I go back to those guys when I really want something to lift me up. New players, there's a lot of great new players out there, people that are coming up. The one guy that's kind of getting a lot of people's attention is Marcus King. I don't know that he calls himself necessarily a blues player, but he's got that American roots music. He's on kind of the part of the jam band scene, but all that stuff is firmly connected to blues. And he's got an outstanding talent with his instrument, and I'm curious to see what he ends up doing with it. But, the guys that I want to get inspired by are usually the guys that inspired me from the get-go.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we're going to take a real quick break, and the guys are going to come back and play a few songs for us. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
We're back. It's a quick break. I'd like to bring now to the stage Mr. Noah Hunt and Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
two things. First of all, this is very stripped down production here. Two electric guitars and vocals. The other thing is that you've just been hearing us talk for the past 35 minutes. This is going to be significantly louder than our speaking voices. So, is that okay? Is that too much for you? Is that the G string? So we're going to do, how many songs are we supposed to do? 3? All right, well, I'm not asking you. We'll be here all night. No, we got a schedule we have to keep. I know. We appreciate it. They say 3, maybe 4. We're gonna do 2. We're gonna do 2 from the new record, and then we'll see what happens after that. How many of you guys have heard any of the new stuff? Because if you know, on all the various places where you can now get music or stream music, there's I think there's 4 songs available that you can listen to right now, even though the record officially comes out on May 31st. So these 2 songs are 2 of those songs. This is called Woman Like You. Same old change.
All right, this is a really cool blues song that we talked about before. It's called I Want You. just realized how bad I needed that water. My G-string is unhappy. I'm happy all day. Tears on the river, push on the shut, it don't mean much. So go on, Jack, match on fire, cold on ice, a dead man's up. Whisper on the street, doesn't change a thing, don't bring you back. Blue on black. Truth, yeah, lies and in between. And wrong can't be undone. Lord, it slipped from the tip of your tongue. Help us out, New York City. Hey, blue on black, tears on the river, push on the shut, it don't mean much. Sugar on Jack, match on the fire, cold on ice, a dead man's up. Whisper on the screen, doesn't change a thing, don't bring you back. Blue on black. Oh, blue on black. Hey, tears on the river, push on the shore. whisper on the screen doesn't change a thing. Don't bring you back. Hold back. Okay, so they told us 3, we're gonna do 4. King B, all right. I'm a king bee, baby, buzzing around your hive. I'm a king bee, baby, I'm buzzing around your hive. Yes, I can make you honey, baby. Just let me come inside. Well, I'm a king bee, baby. Don't you want to be my queen? I'm a king bee, baby. Don't you want to be my queen? Yes, I can make you honey, baby, like the world ain't never seen. Show 'em what I'm talking about. Well, I'm a king bee, baby. I'll buzz you all night long. Yes, I will. I'm a king bee, baby. I'll buzz you all night long. Ooh, yes. Yes, I can buzz you better, baby, when your other man is gone. That's when I want you to come see me, baby.
Thank you so much, Manhattan. Oh! Yes, all right.
Come on, everybody, let's give it up. Noah Hunt, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, the new record, The Traveler, out May 31st. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out, you guys. We appreciate your support. Thank you.